We're very grateful that he was as forthcoming as he was. We made the same admonishment that my colleague Chairman Cummings made so eloquently, that he needed to tell us the full truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. None of the questions we had for him went unanswered.
The House Intelligence Committee questioning Michael Cohen for nearly 8 hours in a closed-door session yesterday, ending with the promise of him returning to the Hill next week. Now, some lawmakers are hinting at new information that could prove relevant in the panel's investigation into Russian election interference. Let's bring in House Intelligence Committee member Chris Stewart. Good to have you here this morning. So what new information could be relevant?
Well, I got to tell you that the vast majority of this hearing was just a rehearing of everything that we've heard before, not just from Mr. Cohen, but more broadly as well. The format is quite a bit different, and it's much more informative. Rather than 5 minutes for all these Congress people who take 4.5 minutes to give a speech and maybe ask a question at the end, each side, the majority and the minority, are given an hour, and we alternate back and forth, and anyone can speak, and you can speak or ask questions for as long as you want and bore down on certain lines of questioning. So it's much more informative. But if people are trying to present the impression that there was some dramatic new revelation or some dramatic thing that's going to lead to the president's impeachment or further legal jeopardy, I got to tell you that I just don't think that's true. And I can't go into details on the committee, but I can say this, that almost everything was things that almost everyone knows. And too often, everyone's chasing this new accusation, this new bombshell, this new revelation, and then, many times nothing comes of it. And I think that's probably about where we are right now.
What was your conclusion that you were able to draw about any collusion that Michael Cohen knew about with the president in Russia?
Well, he was very, very clear in our committee, but I won't speak about that, but I will speak what he said in the previous day's hearing. He was very clear. I have no direct evidence. I have no evidence that there was any collusion or conspiracy. We asked him every possible which way we could. And you kind of, again, bore down on this deal. Well, I had my suspicions. Well, what are your suspicions, and are they based on any evidence? There is no evidence, and I think, frankly, anyone who's trying to craft the narrative that the president colluded with Russians during the election, anyone who's still saying that, I think they've just lost their minds. They're so tempered by their dislike, and frankly sometimes hatred for this president, that they're willing to believe almost anything. I think most reasonable people have put that aside. But there are other things we want to talk about, and some of it you have to filter through this lens of, is he telling us the truth now? What is his motive for being here and saying these things? But he was very clear, and he's been very clear.
I know you're not commenting on
evidence.
I know you're not commenting on specifically what happened behind closed doors yesterday, but will we see a transcript of that publicly eventually?
Well, I hope so. I think we should. And I've made this argument for a long time. This isn't national security. This is a political process here. And most of this should be transparent and open to the public.
All right. As far as potential headaches for the White House and what's to come here, and Michael Cohen returning to the Hill next week after Adam Schiff said, quote, "We had a long day, but it wasn't a long enough day." Chris Christie was on Fox and Friends earlier this morning saying that this sets things up so that plenty of others could be called in. Watch this.
What he really did yesterday was create a whole bunch of additional witnesses that the House is now empowered to try to bring before them. Folks like Alan Weisselberg at the Trump Organization, who he must have mentioned a dozen times. The president's children, who he said was involved in the hush money payments, and others, right? So what he did yesterday was set all that up.
So manage our expectations based on that thinking.
Well, look, it didn't matter whether Mr. Cohen did that or someone else did that. The Democrats' intention is for this investigation to go through 2020 into the next election. There's no question about it. And if they don't find evidence of collusion, which they haven't, or obstruction, which they haven't, then they'll look for something else. And so whether Mr. Cohen gave them the opportunity to go after other witnesses or someone else did, it's very clear that that's what they're going to do, and they'll find a way to do it. And I think, by the way, most Americans just think that's fundamentally unfair. You have no accusations of wrongdoing on the financial side. You have no accusations that Donald Trump's children have done anything wrong. But they're saying, well, we're just going to go look and look and look, and we'll find something. And I think most people just think that's, as I said, fundamentally unfair.
All right. We appreciate you coming on and talking about that this morning on the House Intelligence Committee. A lot more to come on this. Congressman Stewart, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here to respond to that, former House Oversight Committee Chairman and Fox News contributor Trey Gowdy. Mr. Gowdy, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Your reaction, I guess, first of all, to what Representative Maloney had to say about today.
Well, you know, Sean said their focus is on Russia, and then immediately he went to the stripper and the centerfold. So I just heard him say it. Our focus is on Russia, and then the next words out of his mouth were Stormy Daniel and Karen McDougal. So that, and also he wants to wait on a report, and yet 60 of his colleagues have already voted to move forward with impeachment. They ain't waiting on nothing. Collusion. That's what started this entire investigation. That's the seminal question, and it's the one thing Michael Cohen's actually been consistent on. Yeah. In October of 2017, he said there was no evidence of conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, and he said it again today. But Democrats don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that, so now they want to move to an FEC violation.
All right, so a couple of the big items that came out today was this moment with regard to a conversation that Roger Stone had with President Trump on speakerphone in his office. Let's watch.
He was a presidential candidate who knew that Roger Stone was talking with Julian Assange about a WikiLeaks drop on Democratic National Committee emails.
What did you think of that moment?
Well, you know, there are always three aspects to that. There's the hacking of the server, the hacking of John Podesta's email, and then the dissemination of that information, which is why I asked Michael Cohen that question 2 years ago. Do you have any evidence that the president or the campaign was connected with the dissemination? Let's assume, and I'd be careful doing this, but let's assume that Michael Cohen is telling the truth. What crime was committed? What crime is it listening to Roger Stone say, I think WikiLeaks is about to do what they tweeted they were going to do and dump a bunch of documents?
Good point. How about this moment when he talked about Adam Schiff and Chairman Cummings? Watch this.
We spoke with Chairman Cummings and the party.
With Chairman Schiff?
Spoke with Chairman Schiff. Spoke to Mr. Schiff about topics that were going to be raised at the upcoming hearing.
Whoa. Not just what time to show up, actually what you're going to talk about?
The gentleman's time expired.
Wow.
What was that all about?
I think Jimmy had it about right. Wow. And it's not wow that Adam and Cummings talked to a witness. The real wow for me, I mean, I expect them to try to do that. The real wow for me was the Washington Post, the New York Times, Politico, The Hill, their reaction when Republicans were accused of talking to witnesses. It was front page information. Elijah and Adam went nuts. If there was even an insinuation that a Republican chairman had talked to a witness, I want you to count how many articles you see tomorrow about Schiff and Cummings prepping Cohen before he comes to Congress. You won't find a one.
That's remarkable. You know, one of the other takeaways today was a lot of questions that were raised about this Southern District of New York investigation. And Alan Weisselberg, who was the CFO of the Trump Organization, worked very closely in this circle that Michael Cohen was in. He mentioned him several times. He's a cooperating witness in that investigation. What did you make of the fact that Elijah Cummings, when he walked out, said, you know, that he felt that there was evidence that the president is under a criminal investigation here in New York?
For an FEC violation?
And potential, other financial improprieties is the suggestion of what Michael Cohen said. He couldn't talk about some of it, but the word that was, mentioned was fraud and the like.
Well, the Southern District thinks so little of Michael Cohen that they're going to let him go to the Bureau of Prisons without ever using him as a witness. And Bob Mueller thinks so little of Michael Cohen that they're going to let him go to the Federal Bureau of Prisons without ever using him as a witness. In fact, Mueller did something he never does. He actually spoke. He actually corrected Michael Cohen and his lawyer. So the fact that Congress would allow someone that no real serious investigation considers a witness to come be their star witness shows how far Congress has fallen. And it breaks my heart to say that. I care about the institution. But to call a convicted perjurer as your first witness was stunning to watch.
I want to ask you one thing before I let you go. This is a tweet from Congressman Matt Gaetz yesterday, which he has since taken down. It says, "Hey, Michael Cohen, do your wife and father-in-law know about your girlfriends? Maybe tonight would be a good time for a chat. Wonder if she'll remain faithful when you're in prison. She's about to learn a lot." He took that down, as I said. Was that an error on his part?
It was more than an error. It's indefensible. It's not persuasive. You know, the president has a lot of really provocative allies, like Matt. He could stand to have a few more persuasive allies, people like John Ratcliffe, Elise Stefanik, people who can actually make the case. But threatening a witness, and I'm going to leave the criminality to others, but threatening a witness like that in a tweet, you're not helping the person you're trying to help. You actually look guilty as hell when you do things like that. So I'm glad he took it down, but he never should have put it up.
All right, we're going to speak with him tomorrow night and ask him some questions about that as well. Thank you very much,
Good.
Trey Gowdy. Always good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
You bet.